In an era when Prussia was associated exclusively with the march of boots, iron discipline, and the cult of strength, a story was unfolding at the very heart of the Hohenzollern dynasty that ran counter to this harsh aesthetic. In a world where the ideas of eugenics and social Darwinism dictated their cruel rules, and imperfect children were customarily hidden from public view, concealed in the shadows of palace backstages so as not to stain the reputation of flawless royal blood, the fate of Alexandrine of Prussia turned out differently. Like the British Prince John or the forgotten cousins of Queen Elizabeth II, she could have become a skeleton in the closet of the royal house, her existence erased from the chronicles. But Alexandrine, a granddaughter of the last German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, became the sunshine child of the dynasty. While the world around her fiercely debated superior races, sending into oblivion everyone who did not fit the norm, she remained the living embodiment of simple, title-blind warmth. This is the story of how behind the facade of an empire obsessed with the idea of grandeur, there was room for unconditional love, which became a shield for Alexandrine in an era when humanity was in short supply. On April 7, 1915, in Berlin, at the Crown Prince's Palace located on the famous Unter den Linden Boulevard, Princess Alexandrine of Prussia was born. It was the second year of the First World War. Germany was locked in a prolonged and bloody confrontation, and the atmosphere in the capital was permeated with anxiety. For the Kaiser's family, the Hohenzollerns, the arrival of this child was a long-awaited event. The heir to the German throne, Crown Prince Wilhelm, and his spouse, Crown Princess Cecily, already had 4 growing sons: Wilhelm, Louis Ferdinand, Hubertus, and Friedrich. The newborn girl became their first dearly desired daughter. The girl was baptized in compliance with all dynastic traditions, given the full name Alexandrine Irene of Prussia. Each of these names carried a deep symbolic meaning for the family. The name Alexandrine was a tribute to the historical ties with the Russian imperial house and a remembrance of great ancestors, while the middle name, Irene, derived from the Greek word for peace, was chosen personally by Crown Princess Cecily. In the midst of the global slaughter, this name became a mother's silent but sincere prayer for a swift end to the bloodshed in Europe and the return of stability. Within the tight family circle, among her parents and brothers, the newborn princess was immediately, affectionately, and warmly nicknamed Adini. The joy of their daughter's birth was soon replaced by a profound shock for the parents and the entire court staff. After conducting the first thorough examinations of the little princess, experienced court physicians diagnosed her with a genetic anomaly. In the medical terminology of the early 20th century, this condition did not yet have its modern, generally accepted name, but the doctors clearly identified the clinical picture known today as Down syndrome, or trisomy 21. For European ruling dynasties of that time, such a medical verdict was perceived as a crushing blow to the family's prestige. In an era when purity of blood, flawless health, and genealogical perfection were considered key pillars of a monarchy's legitimacy, the birth of a child with mental or physical developmental characteristics was viewed as a dynastic catastrophe. There was a rigid, centuries-old unwritten tradition. Such children were immediately isolated from society, They were sent to closed, remote estates, secluded monasteries, or specialized private clinics under assumed names. Their lives passed in complete obscurity, and their names were effectively erased from official family chronicles, genealogical trees, and court calendars, as if these people had never existed. However, in Edini's case, the usual cruel scenario was decisively shattered. Crown Princess Cecilia, who came from the ruling house of Mecklenburg-Schwerin, demonstrated a spiritual courage and maternal resilience rare for her era. She flatly refused to give her little daughter into the care of closed institutions or to hide her from the public eye. Cecilia was warmly supported by her husband, Crown Prince Wilhelm. Together, they made a firm decision. Alexandrine would stay at home and be raised in the family on an absolutely equal footing with her brothers. This step required serious opposition to the established conservative circles of the Prussian court. Princess Edini was not hidden in the back rooms of the palace during official visits by photographers. Her childhood portraits were openly published, and her name regularly appeared in court newspapers and social chronicles, alongside those of her brothers. From early childhood, the Crown Prince's 4 eldest sons were raised by their parents in an atmosphere of absolute love, care, and natural protection toward their special sister. In the Hohenzollern home, Edini never felt like a burden or an outcast. She was a fully fledged, loved, and protected child. In November 1918, the familiar world of the Hohenzollerns collapsed. As a result of the November Revolution, the German Empire ceased to exist, and Kaiser Wilhelm II was forced to abdicate and flee to the Netherlands, where he found political asylum at the Doorn estate. Crown Prince Wilhelm, as the direct heir to the abolished throne, also had to leave Germany temporarily and go into exile on the cold Dutch island of Wieringen. Crown Princess Cecilia found herself in a critical situation. She was left alone with 5 minor children in Potsdam, which was engulfed in revolutionary chaos, rallies, and political instability. At that moment, Alexandrine had just turned 3 years old, an age when a child especially needs stability, peace, and predictability, which was extremely difficult to provide amid a changing state system. After the acute phase of revolutionary turmoil subsided, prolonged and complex negotiations began between the government of the newly formed Weimar Republic and the House of Hohenzollern to settle property issues. As a result of the signed agreements, the former ruling dynasty managed to retain part of their private property. The family was officially permitted to remain living in Germany and to keep at their disposal the magnificent Sicilienhof Palace in Potsdam. This palace, built in the style of English manor houses and completed just a year before the Revolution, became the main sanctuary and home for the growing Edini. Life at Schloss Sicilienhof proceeded in seclusion, far from the political storms of Berlin, surrounded by the picturesque and peaceful New Garden Park, stretching along the shores of Lake Heiliger Sea. It was this natural landscape that became Alexandrine's primary space for exploring the world. The main pillar, mentor, and close friend of the little princess during this turning point was her nanny and professional educator, Selma Bass. Realizing the full complexity of the girl's diagnosis and understanding that standard educational methods would not work here, Selma Bass developed a unique, deeply individualized development program. She drew on the most advanced achievements of German correctional pedagogy and psychology of the time. Bass's program was built not on drilling or strict limitations, but on unlocking the child's natural inclinations through gentle involvement in daily activities. Thanks to the patience of Selma Base and the sensitivity of her mother, Alexandrine grew up to be an exceptionally gentle, benevolent, smiling, and emotionally responsive child. One of her main passions was music. Adini had a fine sense of rhythm, loved listening to classical pieces and children's songs, which noticeably calmed her and brought her joy. She could watch nature for hours, knew every corner of the garden at Schloss Sizilienhof, sincerely loved birds and domestic animals, and tended to the flowers in the flower beds. Her older brothers, Wilhelm, Louis Ferdinand, Hubertus, and Friedrich, as they grew up, remained faithful protectors of their sister. They were not at all embarrassed by her developmental characteristics and regularly took her with them for walks along the shaded avenues of Potsdam and the city streets. The local residents, accustomed to the frequent appearances of members of the former royal family, treated this group of young people warmly. The townspeople often recalled how the special princess, walking arm in arm with one of her brothers, would always wave to them affably and sincerely, evoking smiles in return. Despite the fact that the Hohenzollerns had officially lost their high political status and state power, traditional court etiquette and royal rituals were still strictly observed within the family. This was an important element of preserving their identity. And in this strict system of rules, Alexandrine was never pushed into the background. At all official family luncheons, gala dinners, and dynastic celebrations, she invariably occupied a place of honor to the right of her mother, Crown Princess Cecilia. She was a mandatory participant in all internal religious and family rites, which underscored her absolute equality and unquestionable status within the family line. By the early 1930s, as Alexandrine was approaching adulthood, Crown Princess Cecilie and Selma Bess began to realize that exclusively home-based methods of education and the confined space of the Potsdam Palace were no longer enough. The maturing princess required deeper socialization, the development of practical skills, and systematic communication with peers who had similar health characteristics in order to learn independence outside the framework of parental oversight. In 1932, when Alexandrine turned 17, an important decision was made at a family council to send her to study at the famous Johannes Trooper Specialized Boarding School, which was located in Thuringia on the picturesque Mount Sophienha in the suburbs of Jena. This institution, established by the prominent German educator, therapist, and pioneer of therapeutic pedagogy Johannes Trooper, enjoyed well-deserved authority throughout Europe. Alexandrine spent several years in Jena, and this experience had a colossal impact on the formation of her personality. At the boarding school, she was deprived of her usual staff of servants and luxury, which benefited her. Under the guidance of experienced mentors, Adini successfully mastered basic crafts. She learned applied arts, hand-loom weaving, sewing, and the basics of landscape gardening. Physical labor in the fresh air strengthened her health, and staying in a community of equals helped develop important self-care skills and everyday independence. The school's educators noted her diligence, conflict-free nature, and amazing kindness to others. One of the most significant, pivotal, and emotional moments in Alexandrine's life occurred in the autumn of 1934. By this time, her younger sister, Princess Cecily, born in 1917, had also reached adolescence. The age difference between the sisters was only 2 years, so it was decided at a family council that they would receive their conscious Christian initiation at the same time. On October 21, 1934, the solemn confirmation of Princess Alexandrine and Princess Cecily took place in Potsdam. For the House of Hohenzollern, traditionally distinguished by deep Protestant religiosity, this event went far beyond an ordinary church sacrament. Alexandrine's public confirmation, after successfully passing preliminary spiritual examinations with the local pastor, was a way for the family to openly declare to society, Adini is a fully fledged, spiritually and morally capable member of the church and a full representative of her dynasty. All close relatives attended the celebration, and this day became a true triumph of Crown Princess Cecily's maternal love, proving that her special daughter was capable of walking this path on equal terms with everyone else. In 1933, the political landscape of Germany changed dramatically. The National Socialists, led by Adolf Hitler, came to power in the country. From that moment on, the darkest, most anxious, and deadly dangerous period of life began for Alexandrine and her entire family. Official Nazi ideology elevated the doctrine of so-called racial hygiene to the rank of state law. Propaganda openly broadcasted the ideas of cleansing the German nation of genetic ballast and life unworthy of life. The Hohenzollerns clearly recognized the potential threat hanging over Adini, understanding where the radical eugenic tendencies of the new regime were leading. Although her status as a granddaughter of the late Kaiser and daughter of the Crown Prince provided Alexandrine with a high level of inviolability, leaving an adult princess with obvious signs of Down syndrome in Potsdam or Berlin under the close scrutiny of the Nazi racial offices was becoming increasingly risky. The situation within the family became critical in 1936, when Selma Bess, Adini's longtime nanny, mentor, and loyal protector, passed away. Having lost Adini's primary educator and realizing that totalitarian pressure in the capital was mounting, the family made a strategic decision to act proactively. In that same year of 1936, several years before the official launch of the Nazi program for the physical extermination of the disabled, T4, the Hohenzollerns moved Alexandrine for her safety to the deep south of Germany, to Bavaria. The place of her permanent, secluded residence became the quiet commune of Pocking, located on the shores of Lake Starnberg. This area was traditionally known for more conservative sentiments, and its distance from Berlin allowed her to stay out of the sight of party functionaries. In Bavaria, the princess lived in a secluded villa under a shortened, inconspicuous name, leading the lifestyle of an ordinary private individual. Of course, the local Bavarian authorities and the regional branch of the Gestapo knew perfectly well exactly who was living in Pocking. However, Crown Prince Wilhelm's rigid, unambiguous order, backed by financial resources and the colossal international prestige of the House of Hohenzollern, kept Nazi officials from taking any active measures or attempting to apply racial hygiene laws to Adini. In her Bavarian refuge, surrounded by the care of Erika Strecker and rare but warm visits from relatives, Princess Alexandrine safely and unharmed survived all the terrible years of the Second World War. The long-awaited end of the Second World War in May 1945 brought Germany liberation from Nazism, but for the Hohenzollern family, it turned into new hardships and actual financial ruin. Potsdam and the ancestral nest of Sicilienhof found themselves in the Soviet occupation zone. All real estate, lands, Palaces and valuables of the dynasty in the east of the country were completely and irrevocably confiscated by the new authorities. It was in the halls of Sicilienhof that the famous Potsdam Conference of the leaders of the victorious powers took place in the summer of 1945. Crown Prince Wilhelm and Crown Princess Cecilia lost everything overnight, turning into elderly refugees. They had to seek shelter in the Western occupation zones, stripped of their former grandeur and customary way of life. Amid this chaos, Alexandrine remained in Bavaria. Returning to the east was impossible and deadly dangerous. Unlike her parents, who were forced to wander, Princess Alexandrine did not move anywhere after the war. She stayed in the same secluded and safe Bavarian commune of Poking, which had become a true home to her over the years. Despite the sharp decline in the dynasty's financial capabilities, the loyal Erika Strecker did not leave her pupil. She continued to remain by her side around the clock, creating a cozy home environment for Adini, ensuring her familiar daily routine and shielding her from post-war devastation and everyday hardships. In 1951, Alexandrine's father, Crown Prince Wilhelm, passed away, and 3 years later, in 1954, her devoted mother, Crown Princess Cecilia, died, having prayed for her special daughter until her very last breath. After the passing of their parents, the full legal, financial, and moral responsibility for Adini's fate was assumed by her older brother, Prince Louis Ferdinand of Prussia, who by then became the official head of the imperial house of Hohenzollern in exile. Louis Ferdinand treated this duty with deep reverence and knightly nobility. Despite being immensely busy with the affairs of the dynasty, frequent trips, and managing the surviving family assets, he regularly, several times a year, personally visited Adini in Poking. He fully paid all the expenses for her maintenance, medical care, and the needs of Erika Strecker, vigilantly ensuring that her beloved sister lacked nothing. Princess Alexandrine of Prussia passed away quietly on October 2, 1980, in Poking at the age of 65. For people born with Down syndrome in the early 20th century, when the level of medicine and correctional pedagogy was extremely low, reaching such an age was considered a phenomenal success and deep longevity. This longevity became direct, irrefutable proof of the ideal conditions of love, mental peace, and high-quality care in which she spent her entire life. Her passing marked a symbolic conclusion of a long and complex historical era. The members of the House of Hohenzollern decided that Adini should return home. Her body was carefully transported from Bavaria to Baden-Württemberg, the historical homeland of her ancestors. Alexandrine of Prussia found her eternal rest in the small family cemetery located in the courtyard of the majestic Hohenzollern Castle near Heckingen. She was buried in close proximity to the graves of her parents, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, as well as her older brother Louis Ferdinand of Prussia, who had faithfully cared for her until the end of her days. Alexandrine Irene of Prussia was an invisible princess whose life defied all the cruel laws of her time. She left no political legacy, but she left something far greater, the example of a family that chose human love over political prestige. Passing into eternity under the vaults of Hohenzollern Castle, she forever remained that very sunshine child who reminds us a person's true value lies not in their strength, but in their capacity to be themselves. Her path proves that even in eras consumed by madness and the search for perfection, quiet kindness can become the most powerful act of resistance. And as long as we remember her name, Alexandrine's story continues to teach us the most important lesson. The greatness of a lineage is measured not by the glitter of crowns, but how tenderly it preserves its most precious treasure, the lives of its most vulnerable children. If you were moved by the fate of this princess, please share this story. Perhaps right now, it is important to remind someone that every human being, regardless of their developmental characteristics, deserves an unconditional right to life, love, and memory. Because every person has the right to be heard and loved, please support this video with a like and a subscription. It is the best way to make stories like this visible to the world. It is very important for me to know your opinion. Do you think many such invisible personalities remain in history, forgotten because of the prejudices of their era? Share your thoughts and personal stories in the comments. Let's discuss it together. And see you in the next video.